Hello. I thought today I would share some grandpa advice with you. Grandpa life advice. I am a grandpa after all, and I thought it'd be a good time to share some grandpa life advice. No matter what your age is, if you're teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, whatever, that this would be a good thing for me to share with you, because I've just completed another trip around the sun, and my birthday was a week or so ago, and it always gets me, thinking about what I can share with you that's pertinent. And I thought some life advice would be relevant today, because what it boils down to is I want you to be living the life that you want to live versus living the life that you're supposed to want to live. So let's chat about that. Welcome to Goose Pond Hideout, and I am Rob. So some grandpa life advice about living the life that you want to live versus living the life that you're supposed to want to live. And I mean, you know it. You are a kid and you're going to school, and everybody around you, parents, family, get a good education, study hard in school, and study, get a smart education, do well in school. Then you get out of school and you get a job, and you do well at your job and work hard and get promotions, and keep going through that, and save your money and all of those things. And then when you get to retirement age, you retire and you do all the fun things that you want to do. Hey, that ain't the way. Seems pretty silly to me. So rather than getting sucked into that hamster wheel of life and working, and because a saying that I have is deferring life until later is like saving sex for old age. And the reality is, by the time you get old, you're probably going to have some health issues. You're going to be seeing the doctor all the time. You're going to be on some medicines, and you're not going to have the energy that you had when you were younger. And so the thought of doing all these fun things really is kind of silly. And why not do fun things your entire life, and waiting till this time when you're old and you're supposedly now you can enjoy life? So what do you do? How do you deal with that? And what it comes down to is you've got to have perseverance, and you've got to have dedication and perseverance to the plan, the thing that you want to do. And then the other thing besides that is I'm a big fan of having just a plan A. Do not make a plan B, because the minute you make a plan B, now you've given yourself an out to not be successful at your plan A. And an example that pops into my mind is the musician, singer, Ed Sheeran. I'm sure you've heard of Ed Sheeran with his music and that. And if you look here on YouTube, if you go back and look at his early videos, he made some videos when he was 14, singing a couple songs. And I mean, he was terrible. He couldn't carry a tune in a 5-gallon bucket. And I'm sure that people said, this music career is never going to pan out for you. You need to get a real job. and just have that music thing is a hobby that you fool around with in your spare time. But of course, he didn't listen to any of that. He was dedicated, and he persevered through, and he had just a plan A. He was going to be successful in his music career. And in about 4 years, that happened. 4 to 5 years. By the time he was 19, he was a big success. And again, listen to his videos at 14, and then play one of his popular songs, that he wrote in that after he was 19 and older. And that's the kind of thing that I want you to be thinking about, is being dedicated and persevering and having just a plan A to whatever it is that you want to do. Now, when you're young, Ed knew that he wanted to be in music from his teenage years, but you may not know what you want to do, and that's fine. That's okay. And I know when I talked with a lot of young people back in the day when I was in the real world, and before I retired, so to speak. I never plan on actually retiring, but just to use that word, of what I mean by retiring is not being in the hamster wheel rat race of job, work, make money, spend money, and that. But so, maybe as a young person, you don't have any idea what you want to do. And I used to always say, like, for example, if you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you've been a kid your whole life. All you've known is being a kid and just going to school and whatever you do in your summer breaks and that. Maybe you have family vacations, or you just, play outside or play your video games or whatever. And you really don't have any clue. Well, how can you have any idea what you want to do in life until you've actually done some things? And the way I view life is, I say life is a chapter book, and you have one chapter, and then you finish that chapter and you move on to the next chapter, and you have chapters in your life, and that's the way I feel that it should be. And then when you think of something that's fun to do it. And my early days, I learned Morse code just because I wanted to learn Morse code. When I was a little bit older, I got into map and compass work, I guess what they actually call orienteering. But I'd get those, now this was way back before GPS existed, and you'd get those big sectional maps, great big, they're green and blue, and they got the brown contour lines on them. And they're really, really detailed with streams and trails and the height of the land, the contours and that. And you had an actual compass, the little piece of plastic with the wheel on it that pointed to north, and mine had a little mirror on it. And I actually still have it. It's in the house in a box somewhere. I didn't know where it was to show it to you, but it's in a box somewhere in the house, packed away, safe and sound. You ever do that? You pack things away safely and then you forget where you put them? They're so safe you'll never find them again. And I learned, got quite good at the orienteering thing. And somebody might say, well, Rob, what are you ever going to use that for? Well, then when I got a little bit older, I decided I wanted to learn to fly an airplane. So I took airplane lessons and learned to fly. And in flying, you have sectional maps that show you everything relative that's important for being in an airplane. And you need to learn to use a compass, and you have this wheel thing that you turn, and because the difference between an airplane in the air and hiking a trail on the ground is you got to take into account the wind. If you're headed straight south and the wind's out of the east, it's going to be blowing you off course, so you've got to turn the plane. So if you want to fly straight 180 degrees south, you might have to point the plane at 170 or 165 so that your nose is pointing one way, but your plane is actually tracking the other way. And people will be, well, you're spending a lot of money learning to fly an airplane. What the heck good is that going to do you in the job world of life? Well, when we moved on to the sailboat, all of that airplane learning directly correlated over to being on a sailboat in the water, because it's the same thing. You've got the current in the water, and the tide going in or out, and then you have the wind too, which of course blows the sail, moves the boat, but it also wants to blow you off course, so you've got to learn to adjust your course. So the orienteering to the airplane to the being on the sailboat, one thing led to the next in my life. And that's just, experiencing more things. And that makes me the person that I am. And it'll make, it develops you into the person that you're going to be, because all that knowledge is with you forever. Nobody can ever take that away. And it's about having fun all the time, every day in life, while you're, instead of waiting till you're old and can't do anything anyway. And that's my grandpa life advice, is figure out what you want to do, and if you don't know what you want to do something, do anything. And if you like what you're doing, you do more of that. And if it's something that you don't like, that you say, gee, I don't really want to be doing this, well, then do less of that. And chart your course through life, through your chapter book. And because people will say things like when we moved onto the sailboat, people are like, well, what happens if you don't like being on the sailboat? What are you going to do all day while you live on a sailboat? And aren't you going to be, bored or whatever? And again, it's, we moved onto the sailboat. That was a chapter in our life. And then after 9 years, we said, we're getting kind of, restless. We've done the sailboat thing and living in the boat, and we really, really like it, but we're getting a little bit older, up and down from the cabin to the cockpit, and cooking in the boat, and working the lines and everything. It's getting a little bit harder. So let's turn the page and start a new chapter in life. And now we're here on the homestead. And I learn things every day, taking care of the chickens and doing the garden and all of that. And, we're enjoying this chapter in our life. And of course, now I am grandpa aged and retired, so to speak. Again, I'm still doing things. But, that traditional work and retire thing, I always thought was a fallacy, was a false life. And you live every day and do things that you want to do. You live the life that you want to live, rather than living that life that you're supposed to want to live. Because that's just, in my opinion, that's no way to live life. So be out there doing what you want to do, enjoying things, trying things out. And if you like something, do more of it. And you don't like something, do less of it. And when you get tired of something, even something that you like. And, I'm sure Ed Sheeran, at some point in his life, he's going to decide that, he wants to do something a little bit different as he gets older. And, maybe he doesn't want to travel the world and do concerts anymore or whatever. And, that's okay. That's all part of living life, is having some fun all the time, not just doing, I never understood that thing. In fact, when I was young in school, when I was in college, my advisor, my mentor, he used to always say to me, Rob, get a job in a place that you can make a lot of money, because you can always go on vacation in the places that you want to be. And it just never sat with me. It never made sense. I could never understand wanting to live and work in a place, and maybe even at a job that I don't really like. I don't want to hate my life Monday to Friday so that I can have, fun and do the things that I like on the weekend, and then once or twice a year take a vacation and go to the place that I really want to be and have fun there, knowing that at the end of my vacation, I got to go back to this place that I don't want to live, doing a job that I don't want to do. just so that I can make a lot of money. I mean, that to me, that's just crazy. So don't let that happen to you. Whether you're a teenager, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, today's the time to listen to this grandpa life advice and do the things that you want to do, because it's all about your freedom. Freedom!